In the second half of February, I received a telegram from friends, Agafya is ill. We will take her out by helicopter to Tashtub. And 4 weeks later, in letters and telegrams, the stunning news, Agafya got married. The surname, name and patronymic of the newlywed were called. While I, alarmed and puzzled, was getting ready for a long journey, another letter came from Agafya. Not a word about marriage. Curved, hasty lines, as usual, with a mention of God, with a wish for health. Essence, come for Christ's sake. I am sickened in sorrow. 3 of us gathered to fly from Tashtub, standing on the edge of the Abakan taiga, Nikolai Nikolaevich Savushkin, who has been taking human part in the fate of the Lykovs for many years, and journalist Nikolai Ustinovich Zhuravlev, who visited the Lykovs in 1982, and I. It's unusual without Arafay. He's on the drill watch. After 2 years of professional hunting, I realized that I had not taken up my own business. Again asked to be a driller. And one more piece of news, the exploration site is living out its last year. The village, the residential heart closest to Agafya's hut, will be abandoned. It will become difficult, almost impossible to get to this corner of the taiga without airplane opportunities. In the forestry enterprise and at the airfield in Tashtub, we try to find out from friends and acquaintances what is there in the taiga. Everyone smiles, she's married. They call him a newlywed, a local resident, an old believer. Already from the pilots we learn with chagrin, the master of the house is not there. 3 days ago he flew out of the taiga with a passing flight. Abakan was opened early this year. Along the entire course, the river is already free of ice. But the recently fallen snow fringes the greenish water, glistens with sugar on the hills. The taiga is transparent, between the trees I would even see a hair from above. But nothing alive can be seen, although the local cedar grove is not poor. The helicopter is in a hurry on business. Therefore, we fly by, without landing, the sediment of geologists. Then we see on the left along Abakan the old abandoned hut of the Lykovs. And now a plume of smoke from a residential hut, a goat on a leash, a dog with a soundless bark greets the helicopter, and, out of habit, runs to the place where it usually sits. While making a U-turn and descending, the hostess in grey baggy clothes, in her usual handkerchief, in galoshes, felt boots trimmed with rabbit fur, is hastily mincing to the cliff near the river. Conversation on the go is not on the main topic. Agafya shows the place by the river, where the merle was battened down by a wolf. Then she showed the place near the hut, where the strange wolf had been shot. Agafya's baptized, barely seeing the stray beast, said, "What a dog, a wolf." Agafya insisted on shooting him immediately. Consideration, let's wait a little. Vasil Mikhailik will fly in and take pictures, was rejected. It's impossible to live with wolves. They will still breed. The strange behavior of the wolf was not the only animal that ran into these lands in winter. About 10 days ago, a whole pack of wolves drove a young merle to the edge of the river. A deer fell off a cliff, broke his leg, and skinned his side. Fleeing from predators, he wandered into the river opposite the hut. The doomed beast was shot. Cutting carcasses, salting meat was the last page of a short family life. Realizing all the delicacy of the moment, we were in no hurry with questions. Agafya started herself. We listened without interrupting while she spoke. "That's it. I wrote to Sergei Petrovich Cherepanov, head of the exploration expedition. I renounce Ivan Vasilievich Tropin. I wrote to the mothers, nuns, on the Abryennisera repentance and prayer to be tonsured as a nun. Having already returned from the taiga to Abaza, we tracked down the failed spouse, talked with the head of the exploration expedition, who visited the newlyweds on their honeymoon. Comparison of what was heard clarifies the drama, ordinary, common in the sea of everyday life, but here, under exceptional circumstances, bitterly painful. It is sinful to live in the world, it is impossible to live in the world. Old man Lykov himself preserved this view until his last breath and bequeathed to his daughter, to adhere to the righteous faith. He did not bless to join even fellow believers living in the remote village of Gornaya Shoria. And Agafya of the covenant holds fast. The Taitenka saw the relief of her fate in the entrapment of someone in their taiga solitude. Life has shown that desire is unrealizable. Several people who had infiltrated here at different times turned out to be either inveterate swindlers or naive people, touched. Agafya humorously talked about the seekers, calling others not approved in the mind, others lost in faith or incapable of living in taiga Zakuti. Realizing that sooner or later parishionership may end in drama, We asked the authorities in Tashtap and geologists, without whose transport it is very difficult to get here, to fence the Lykovs from idle curiosity and rogue. And on the whole it was quite successful. But it is impossible to order Agafya herself. The character is Lykovsky. Having learned communication with people, she was already burdened without him, and did not lose hope of arranging life according to Tyatyu's behest. This winter, it was as if the desired event had been sought out. In the field of view of the Taiga woman was a fellow believer, even a relative of the 6th or 7th generation. Ivan Vasilievich Tropin. Living in Abaza, he visited Agafya more than once. He brought salt, flour, some household items, sympathetically related to her fate. Ivan Vasilievich read and interpreted the sacred books no worse than Agafya. However, he is infected with a worldly spirit, he is very drunk, and blasphemes during his drunkenness, said Agafya, who visited his house in Abaza during a trip to her relatives, with a sigh. The family life of a bearded old believer did not work out. He either drove his wife away, or she left. While on retirement, the Bobby got a job as a boatman for geologists. We could not find out who gave the sign to whom. One way or another, Ivan Vasilievich appeared at the dead end with residence permits. As we understood, there was no objection. But Agafya offered to live like brother and sister. Without much work, the 63-year-old fellow believer was able to explain to her that such a life is impossible. We are living people, and God will have nothing against it. We must live like a husband and wife. Of course, there was no question of the registry office. No papers, no press, nothing worldly Lykovs did not recognize, and Agafya stands firmly on that. However, she found a means to legitimize the union. She wrote to the nuns on the Yenisei with a request to bless the marriage, and Ivan Vasilievich undertook to deliver the paper to its destination. He himself, showing the seriousness of his intentions, invited the head of the exploration expedition, whom Agafya knew well, as a witness. Sergei Petrovich told us that he was amazed at the transformation of the hut. The dishes are sparkling, the sheets are on the bed. The honeymoon, however, was cut short. The reason for this, as you can understand, is simple. Everything that begins a married life for Agafya turned out to be not honey, but bitter wormwood. Age, she is 45. The severity of faith, the belatedness of everything, fear. Everything merged into one. The unfortunate woman felt everything as sinful, unnecessary and absurd. Clarification of the relationship over the entire incident led to a quarrel. There were two obstinate characters, moreover, from two different worlds. I don't know if the question of the place of residence was included in the marriage contract. Ivan Vasilievich says that, thinking about living, he bought a house away from the village of Tashtap for a secluded life. Agafya allegedly tacitly agreed to a sortie from the taiga, but at the decisive moment of explanation she refused to move anywhere. To which the betrothed said, "Well, I can't be here, and I don't want to live." In response, Agafya wrote to the witness of their union something like a solemn declaration, "I renounce Ivan Vasilievich Tropin." And to Ivan Vasilievich herself she handed a message to the mothers on the Yenisei, with tearful repentance and a prayer for Tanjira as a nun. This is not about the monastery, but about the status of life. Agafya wrote to Moscow in the confusion of feelings and thoughts. She had to share her shock with someone. In reflections, how to be? I reminded her of the last visit of relatives and said that I see the only way out of the impasse. To move to the village of religionists. You can't. Agafya says thoughtfully, fingering the silvery willow lamb with her fingernail. Agafya still explains the impossibility of living in the village, even in a separate hut, and with her own vegetable garden, by referring to the Tyatyu who did not bless such a move, as well as by clouding of faith. The kids with red rags around their necks are walking around, taking pictures. The doctor who came here also instilled in her the idea that in the village she would die of the flu. For 7 years of communication, we already know how difficult it is to convince Agafya of everything that does not agree with her habits, sanctified by the strength of faith. She will listen to everyone, and will make a decision, relying only on her understanding of the circumstances. Breaking a lie stereotype is difficult for her, and can be really destructive. But here, in the taiga trap, the threat to her life is almost palpable. Complaining about colds. Or you can twist your leg, or the bear will break. You look, and there is no one to call for help. The geologists will soon be gone. Pulls a willow twig with his fingers. What can God give, with a half-word understanding the disturbing question about the possible consequences of a fleeting marriage, Agafya looks up. No, God had mercy, the child will not. God had mercy. Returning to her experience, she again talks about the details of the appearance of a wolf near the hut. There was a sign. The omen, time heals wounds. Agafya looks at what she has experienced with a fair amount of irony, she even laughed cheerfully a couple of times. Appetite improves. Until Easter. 3 days, and Agafya, showing us the chicken coop, brought out a sieve with eggs. Collected for the holiday, domestic animals. Chickens, goats, dogs require attention and care. But this is exactly what is extremely necessary to fill life with at least something. And there is an acute need for good food with poor health. I killed a goat in winter. And from Christ Sunday I will drink milk. Agafya tied a summit from the reed. She hopes to catch fish in Hermit. There is a gun with a bandolier hanging right by the door. Shot on hazel grouse, bullets against bears. Well, show me how you shoot. Agafya willingly takes a single barrel and aims at a birch bark box lying in the garden. Well, here's to you, Voroshilov's shooter. 1 shot. Nikolai Nikolaevich laughs. You won't hit the bear. Save the Lord from the bear. We were talking quietly, looking at the April park flowing over the vegetable garden, when the sound of a helicopter was heard in the distance. Agafya heard him first and started. That's goodbye. We rolled down the trail to a pebble spit by the river. Thank you for visiting. No voice is heard through the roar of the car. But the hand raised up is so eloquent, the eyes are expressive, it is so nagging to see a small figure near the water. The weather is bad. The pilots do not dare to climb into the clouds over the mountains. We fly along the canyon, repeating the bends of the cold and indifferent river.